YouTube? We're back with the final video for skills in the Pathfinder Noob Learn series. We'll be capping it off with some general skills, so let's get into it. Decipher Writing. You must be trained in the relevant skill to decipher writing. Something that I didn't really mention in the previous videos were that some skills required you to be trained in a skill versus being untrained in a skill. And I just wanted to take a minute here to appreciate that concept. There's nothing that I find more lame when I'm playing a TTRPG than when I'm proficient in a skill and I roll poorly, but someone who's not proficient in a skill and has like a negative modifier rolls higher and succeeds when I don't. That's my skill. That's what I'm supposed to be good at. And Shmobi is doing great? I don't think so. It's not my favorite thing in the world. It's gonna happen occasionally, but I would prefer that it didn't ever. I always want to roll high. There's something about having trained and untrained actions that takes the concept of being good at a skill and really solidifying it in a way that 5th edition doesn't. In Pathfinder, when you're trained in a skill, you can actually do things that other people can't. You can do more than just roll an absurdly high number. Arcana is typically used for writing about magic or science, occultism for esoteric text about mysteries and philosophy, religion for scripture, and society for coded messages or archaic documents. I didn't realize that science fell under the Arcana umbrella. I'm currently running this game that's supposed to be super arcane punk, and I don't think that I ever would have thought to have someone roll for science checks under Arcana. I also like how much society feels like the spy skill. Having read society in the previous video, the description itself doesn't really come off as spy forward, whereas its skills do, but especially reading it here, it feels like the skill that you want to train in if you're going to be a spy-like character. You attempt to decipher complicated writing or literature on an obscure topic. This usually takes 1 minute per page of text, but might take longer, typically an hour per page for decrypting ciphers or the like. I've made a lot of coded spell books from Paranoid Wizards, specifically to give to my players so that they could slowly decipher them and just have their own way to slowly gain new spells. However, I was always improving my way through what this deciphering process looked like. There are no specific rules that I was looking at to come up with this. I continue to appreciate that Pathfinder gives newer GMs tools like these for more situational experiences that required me to improv my way through as a newer DM. I don't think there's much of a difference here between the success states for the way that I DM. I'm never out there with an entire document handwritten with specifics. Most of the time I would just paraphrase. Though I can see instances with spell books or to try and get the answer to a riddle or a password, the differences would be crucial, but I don't often have that. There's something about compounding failures that just feels really rough. When I first read it, I thought it would continually apply, so eventually you'd just be rolling at a -16 if you kept failing. But that just doesn't seem to make sense, so I don't think that it's the case. I really don't like the critical failure though, and with how much Pathfinder likes rolling in secret, with a crit fail like this, it's very strange to me that this isn't something that the GM would be rolling in secret. Personally, I just don't like giving false information as a DM. When you're deciphering something, chances are it's likely supposed to help propel the plot and give players some new direction or information. Giving them false information is a very high-level DM method, or one that newer or moderate DM could get through with some luck, but even then, just putting pivotal information behind a single roll can go a long way in screwing everything up. Pointing them in the wrong direction would take a lot of nuance to handle correctly. Earn income. You can use a skill, typically crafting, lore, or performance, to earn money during downtime. You must be trained in the skill to do so. Because this process requires a significant amount of time and involves tracking things outside of the progress of adventures, it won't come up in every campaign. I feel like D&D actually made this more complicated than it needs to be, and in a very rare circumstance, Pathfinder's actually the more simplified version. This is what really brings the simplicity to earning income. It tells you everything you need to know in the best ways, and it doesn't matter what skill you're even using. All of this feels very 5th edition D&D because I would figure that performing and doing arcane research would net different levels of income. But that's a level of immersion and specificity that would come from Pathfinder, and it's just not here. This is hilarious. This is the most you fucked up I've ever read a crit fail. You earn nothing. You're fired immediately. Your reputation suffers. I would over narrate every downtime failure as if they'd done the worst thing ever. Identify magic. Using the skill related to the appropriate tradition, you can attempt to identify a magical item, location, or ongoing effect. I appreciate that this just takes the identify spell from 5th edition and turns it into a skill-based action that you can take. It feels like feedback that I would have given had I been a tester for 5th edition. So many times do my players try to identify a magical object or detect magic without utilizing the spell, and it just turns into a basic arcana check to give very little information for what the spells would do in a lot more depth. There's something so much more magical scientist about using a skill to try and intuit whether something is magical and what it does, rather than just casting a spell and just aha, you know, yeah, it's a +1 sword, it can turn on fire, it does all this really cool shit. As opposed to just like, oh, I wonder what, like, there's just something about taking the time to actually do it that feels like you're getting in there and fucking with it and doing all this cool shit. I really like this skill. Once you discover that an item, location, or ongoing effect is magical, you can spend 10 minutes to try and identify the particulars of its magic. It even takes a minute less than ritual casting identify in 5th edition. I know that they were probably just going for a round number, but I think it's just like such a hilarious little dig. Cursed or esoteric subjects usually have higher DCs or might even be impossible to identify using this activity alone. Reading this is actually incredibly inspiring. I just envision this like overly magical area where all this weird shit is going on and there's a bunch of arcanists and scientists that have come to investigate. Everyone's making all these checks and all this shit's going wrong, and the party's just hired to be muscle or to help investigate as well. And then it just turns into this weird magical planar hopping experience. Is cool. I like it. I'm inspired. But why? I wish it was a little less ambiguous here. I do like that there's room to improv and come up with something, but this type of failure just comes off as a cooldown and makes it feel gamey. Learn a spell. If you're a spellcaster, you can use the skill corresponding to your magical tradition to learn a new spell of that tradition. You can just learn a spell? You could just anyone, just any what? It's so cool. I play an arcane trickster, which is basically just a wizard rogue, and I can't learn spell. I'm stuck with what I got. I'm supposed to be a roguish wizard, but I don't get the spellbook feature that the wizard does. I just get to learn wizard spells and be a wizard, but not a wizard. I want this. I want this feature for my rogue, so that I can get more spells and feel like a wizard, but without actually multi-classing, because I don't like to multi-class. What does an arcane trickster in this game look like? Does it exist? I'm so excited for Rogue. Hey, what's going on? We're just taking a little break here to remind you to like and subscribe. Also, since skill feats are the next video, comment below and let me know which one you're most excited for me to read. Okay, back to the video. You can gain access to a new spell of your tradition from someone who knows that spell, or from a magical writing like a spellbook or scroll. They took the entire wizard feature, the thing that makes the wizard, and made it a general skill. What? Not only that, but they took it a step further and said, no, it does not have to be from a spell book. It does not have to be from a scroll. It can also just be from a fucking caster. It's so cool. This is like such an improvement, and I'm really excited to see how wizards work and are differentiated from like sorcerers. To learn a spell, you must do the following. Attempt a skill check for the skill corresponding to your tradition. I love this. I love this so much. This is my favorite skill since borrowing a spell. Just let me roll. I want to roll for everything, and I like that you just want to roll the dice. Roll the dice. I have them. They're right here. I love dice. I just want to roll them all. I mean, as long as it doesn't like lock me out of doing, like, yeah, just don't. Yeah, okay. Oh my god, learning spells is so cheap too. 2! A first level spell is 50 gold to transfer in 5th edition. It's 2 gold here! Even with one of the comments saying that gold kind of transitions to being like a platinum equivalent, meaning that 2 gold in Pathfinder would really be the equivalent to like 20 in 5th edition, that's still 30 gold cheaper! Every level thereafter in 5e goes up by 50, so a 5th level spell should be about 250 gold. But a 5th level spell in Pathfinder is the first spell that costs more than 50 gold to learn. My mind is blown! Although now that I'm reading what I've wrote, knowing what I know about the Pathfinder economy, this might be more expensive. If a 5th level spell in D&D is about 250 gold and a 5th level spell in Pathfinder is 70 gold, that's really 700 gold. Maybe it's not cheap. I don't know. The fucking Pathfinder economy, I'm real interested in, man. Yeah, this is perfect. It doesn't make it harder to learn the spell if you fail. You only lose the minute amount of gold that it costs if you do really bad. Even better, if you crit success, you only spend half the gold. If I didn't have a wizard in my campaign, I'd make this a thing for every spellcasting class that didn't have access to their entire spell list. Recall knowledge. To remember useful information on a topic, you can attempt to recall knowledge. You might know basic information about something without needing to attempt a check, but recall knowledge requires you to stop and think for a moment so you can recollect more specific facts and apply them. You attempt a skill check to try and remember a bit of knowledge regarding the topic related to that skill. This is Winnie the Pooh, the skill check. Think. Think. It's Winnie the Pooh! I think that this is just kind of like a history skill that they removed and then disseminated across all of the skills as a general skill check. Need to remember something about medicine? Recall knowledge. Need to remember something about thievery? Recall knowledge. Need to remember that one deity that broke through the gates of hell and saved all of the wrongfully accused people and brought them back to the mortal plane to live life anew, having experienced a torment that they can never forget? Recall knowledge. I really do not like that they keep trying to incorporate providing incorrect information. It can really fuck with the meta. It's like when someone polymorphs and takes the idea that a dragonfly is too dumb to change back into a human, so they just exist as a dragonfly for an hour. Some people just take things too far and too seriously. I've seen this happen with information gathering, and giving out wrong information just causes more problems than it's worth. The following skills can be used to recall knowledge. Getting information about the listed topics. There's no built-in rule for what needs to be rolled in 5e for finding the value of an item. To see item value under crafting is just like this amazing breath of fresh air. Recall knowledge for lore is just a lore check. What? This whole check just reminds me of something that's for beginner DMs. Like recall knowledge for nature just feels like it would be a nature check in 5e. At this point, it feels less like a subversion of the history skill and more just like this way to inform new GMs how to better use these skills. The GM might allow checks to recall knowledge using other skills. For example, you might assess the skill of an acrobat using acrobatics. If you're using a physical skill, like in this example, the GM will most likely have you use a mental ability score, typically intelligence, instead of a skill's normal physical ability score. This is something that I think is just heavily underutilized in any situation. I once saw a web DM video about this and how it encouraged people to use other ability scores for different skill proficiencies, and I love it. I think it needs to be used far more often than it actually comes up. Subsist. If you need to provide food and shelter, you can use the subsist downtime activity. This typically uses society if you're in a settlement, or survival if you're in the wild. I love that it's got two different specifics here. You can either use society or survival depending on where you are. But that makes me feel like this is a daily skill that needs to be used. Are you subsisting in a city if you're just a normal person? Like in theory, does a normal citizen have to do the subsist skill every day? Or is this like if you're a beggar and a peasant within a city and you're trying to subsist through different means? Does it also apply if you have all the necessary equipment as an adventurer? If you have a tent, if you've got rations, a sleeping bag, etc. I do like the idea that it invokes where you're just someone that's on the run in the middle of a city. Everyone's out trying to look for you, so you're subsisting in order to not get caught, in order to survive without being able to get into any inns, in order to find food without actually being seen by the vendors. But if these are just everyday checks that you have to make, that's cumbersome. In 5th edition, they recommend that you're supposed to have like 5 encounters every single day, and encounter doesn't have to mean an actual combat, it could just mean a reason to roll. If this is a daily check, it feels like they were trying to take that concept of encounters every day and just make them easier to have happen. You try to provide food and shelter for yourself, and possibly others as well, with a standard of living. Unlike most downtime activities, you can subsist after 8 hours or less of exploration, but if you do, you take a -5 penalty. The amount of rolls you have to do to travel or track someone is just obnoxious. Survival check for the day, subsist for everyone, perception for watches, plus there's probably other stuff that I can't even think of right now. It feels like there's so much going on for traveling, and traveling is already a monotonous thing that I don't think it's possible to make fun. I think for lower levels, it's probably cool to make traveling outside of safely established cities seem dangerous, because it is and it was back then. But as you grow into more sizable adventures, slowly get rid of that shit, because your sizable adventures and the normal wilderness is not as scary anymore, because you're fighting wizards that can fireball an entire tavern and destroy the fucking cities. I like that the critical success gives you the chance to cover for party members that fail. This just seems so specific that I can't imagine an adventuring party suffering from negatives. Maybe 5e just leaves you in a situation where you're always prepared because of the kits you start with. This just feels like something that won't and shouldn't happen often. Tap Ley Line. You can use your magical prowess to temporarily access the power of a ley line. Oh my god, I could just do a whole video on tap ley lines, and honestly, I might. I've always been infatuated with the idea of magical ley lines, and the fact that Pathfinder implements them in such a way that it does is extraordinary. Plus, I want to keep things simple, and the last 2 videos were a bit larger, so I'm going to try and keep this one nice and short. This is just a skill that allows you to tap into ley lines and gain some kind of a benefit, and this is an optional thing that some people won't even have in their campaigns. There's a few different types of ley lines that you can tap into, and each come with their own unique things that you can get from it, or unique backlashes that you can get if you fail. Yeah, I'll probably do a whole video on these at some point. They're super fucking cool. Skills are done. There's no fucking more, but we're gonna do skill feats next. All of you convinced me after a number of different comments that said I should do skill feats before the rogue, so that's what we're gonna do. However, I am starting a new series. I don't know when the video will be out, but it will be out soon, and it's gonna be back in the realm of 5th edition D&D, and I'm really excited about it. And that's all. Until I see y'all again, be well, eat well, sleep well, and dream well. I'll catch y'all next time.